The views and opinions expressed on this program do not reflect the company, owners, management, staff, clients, or partners.
It's Mondays, the 26th day of September, the greatest month of the year. Welcome to the Daily Hour, brought to you by Medical House, One Communications, and Lindays. I'm Jamal Hartman. She is Sancha Durham, and Maya Palacio will be with us in a bit to bring you the latest in her news break. Sister Sanch, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. How you doing?
Jamal, I have to tell everybody about my morning. Um,
Please.
I I'm here, everyone. I'm here. So my mom had to take my son to school so that I can do the show this morning, and she took my handbag, which I left in my car, which has my computer, which has my life in it. So I'm
She
on a
left her.
device. I'm on a device that I don't know how to work. I have on no makeup. I got here about a millisecond before we started. Here I am. No earrings. No. Good
Well,
morning.
if it makes you feel better, I don't have makeup on either, Sancha. I'm loving it. I'm loving it. I'm loving it.
God, but
Hey, you know what? They
it makes for
appreciate.
good stories.
Absolutely, they appreciate you being here. They really do. So, thank you for being here. I would have been alone. Sherry ditched me, Larry ditched me, Phil ditched me, and it was just Don. Maya ditched me, and then it would have been just me. And they don't want just me. I go off there.
I think they love you.
No,
They
no,
would. They would
I
be.
don't know. You know what? What they don't love is Sancha and Jamal together. So let me just give this disclaimer. Dear Bermuda Tourism Authority, we will not be talking about you today. Let's move on. Let's go there. Let's go there. A disclaimer, greetings everyone, and thanks for making us part of your daily routine. A good one today as we welcome Cordell Riley on. We're discussing the minimum wage, which was recently announced by the Minister of, I believe it's Labor or Economy, something, but Minister Jason Hayward. The Daily Play is a Who Said It. This is an interesting one today, and I don't expect anyone in the audience to get it, but I'll give you a big hint. I think the person is referred to as a black economist. That's what I will say. See, Sanj, they love you. They love you. They love you.
Thank you. I'm here trying to get my light right for you.
Teresa Ann Marie says, "You still look gorgeous, Sandra." Folks,
Thank
we have a
you.
lot to discuss. A lot to discuss. And first off, we did have a show on Friday, and a lot of people were asking, "Did you? Did you?" Yeah, we did go live. Sherry and I, myself, we were live. We were engaging people to see how you all made it through the storm, doing kind of a TDH roll call to make sure everyone was safe and well. And we were excited and happy to hear that there was not too much damage and everyone seems safe and secure. To start the show, I just think it's only right that we do give major props to first responders throughout Bermuda, from the hospital to the police to the fire service to the Bermuda Regiment. Just any and everyone. There's people that they just have to still go to work, the nurses, the doctors, but also Belco, Bermuda Electric Light Company. I think they're still called that, Ascendant Group, Liberty, whatever they're called these days. But congratulations to all those people who leave their families to go out there and try to restore electricity. Because I remember, Sancha, hurricanes back in the day, it sometimes was weeks before you got electricity back,
I
right?
was gonna say they did an amazing job.
Mhm.
As I told you, the last time we had a storm, my roof came off, and it was a horrible experience for Maddox and I. So when I saw this was coming Category 4, I was like, "I'm sorry, we're going to a hotel."
Yeah.
So, but I also said to myself, I cannot be with a kid for about 4 days without electricity. But my lights were on in 2 seconds. I was like, this is a waste of money. But I must say, like, Bermuda is so resilient. I mean, when you come out of your hole after the winds have died down, I looked around. Apart from a few trees being on the ground, there wasn't a whole lot of damage. And I can say, like, as a country, we fare well,
Mm.
really, really well. So
No, honestly, I think just discussing with friends and people across that reach out and say, "How'd your family make out?" And they're actually shocked because they see what's happened in Puerto Rico and other
other
countries.
countries,
And, I say, Bermuda's building codes, and again, as we said on Friday, those who came before us did jobs well done, and that's
yeah.
why we must always pay homage and respect to those who came up with the ideas to build the infrastructure that we benefit from today. So, it's Bermuda, and it's something to appreciate. So again, props to them. But that leads to today's question. It leads to today's question. 2003 Fabian, probably the worst I've experienced in my lifetime. Causeway was shut for a couple days, if not weeks or whatever. Lights out for long periods. I remember bringing in people from the Caribbean to help restore electricity. And at that time, you heard a lot of talk about, oh, it's time to go underground. Why are we still dealing with overhead wires? And, we know that what happens after a storm. And this conversation always comes back. So the question of the morning, as I saw a few people posted the other day, is what are your thoughts on Balco putting power lines underground to help the island maintain electricity during storms? What are your thoughts about that? What do you think it's time for Balco to consider putting the power lines underground to help? Well, maybe they've considered it. Do you think it's time for them to do it? To help put the power lines underground to maintain electricity during storms. What are your thoughts, folks?
Well, I mean, it's definitely time. Obviously, I've heard, I've asked this question over and over and over. I've heard it's not in the budget, it's too expensive. But what confuses me is that the amount of roadworks that we have dealt with in the past 2 years or whatever that looks like,
Mm-hmm.
why can't there be a meeting of the minds where there are some budgets combined? Because Jamal, do you remember seeing that map where it had like all the places where they're doing roadworks? And it was like 8 different places, probably more than that, around
Mm-hmm.
the island.
I think I saw it on Twitter. Yeah.
Why can't we work together? And if Waterworks is digging up something, Digicel is digging up something, because if Digicel is underground, why can't we work together and throw Belco in there and we do it all one time, be done with it, pave the road? And sometimes I'm like, it has to be more to it that I'm missing.
Mm,
It has to be.
mm, mm.
Has to be.
Yeah, I
But
mean,
it's time.
yeah, that's an interesting one because for me, one of the cons would be, they're always digging, but you just kind of answered that. It's like, well,
They're
when
always
one
digging anyway.
right. So if they're always digging, why can't we just solve many problems in one go, right?
Yeah.
It only makes sense. What are your thoughts, though, folks? What do you think? What are your thoughts on Balco putting things underground, like to maintain electricity? I know. I guess I don't understand electrical work to that point. Like my father's an electrician. I pulled a wire or two, right? Yeah, I did. Yeah, I know what you all saying. Those hands don't look like manual labor, but I pulled one or two wires. But I'm not gonna sit here and act like I understand how it will all work. What I do believe is that it would take years to do.
Yeah.
So if we were gonna do it, it would probably have to start now for like years from now to be a thing. Now, I know in the US and many new communities that they build, especially in Florida, they do a lot of underground, right? In new communities. Obviously, older communities, they're still above. But I don't know what the infrastructure, I don't know what type of money will go into it. Now, keep in mind, another con, and Phil said this last night. You know that if this is going to cost money, that Balco bill we always complain about? You know that Belco bill that we believe is high for no reason?
Jamal, it can't get any higher. It
Uh,
cannot.
Sancha, I guarantee you'll see another text. This will be Belco underground infrastructure, name it, whatever they want. They
I
will put that in that bill.
I cannot afford it. I'm about to take Maddox's tent from camping and go outside.
Mm,
I cannot afford it to go any higher.
mm.
Please. But
No,
isn't with that being said, isn't Dockyard underground? I feel like Dockyard is underground.
I believe Harbor Road. They've done certain areas. So that's a question. Charles H. Jefferson because I thought that's what they would dig. The digging was all about now. And then Traveling Charlie says it's my understanding that what they are doing now. No. And then Karen Simmons says, so did I. Again, there's certain places it's been done. It has been done. It has been done. I want to say in Harbor Road. Harbor Road. I found out.
Belco is not digging right now. We're not all the digging that's going on. It's like Bermuda Waterworks.
Mhm.
And I remember at one point it was Digicel was doing underground. But if you look, those it's not the trucks from Balco
Mhm.
putting any power lines underneath the ground. So
Mhm.
we are going through this every single day. It was a point where as I was taking Maddox to school, I had to go through 3 stoplights in order to get Maddox to school.
But Sancha, inconveniences is going to be a part of this process, and I'm not
And
quite.
I'm okay with that.
But I don't. I'm not quite sure the majority are for the long term. I think
But
the
think about it, Jamal. If like I said, it was a meeting of the minds, we're here now. If it could have been, we could have been experiencing this all this time.
yeah.
So
So
we could have been into year 3.
someone just put in the comments what I was going to say regarding. I have it on my notes on my whiteboard right here. So I'm not actually a fan of going underground.
Hmm.
I'm not a fan of the putting power lines underground.
Hmm.
In that respect, I think Sean DeShield says it here: go solar. People to stop digging up the roads. And that for me, I think trying to figure out how we can become more solar and you know use natural energy to generate electricity. What does that look like during a storm? Again, I'm not educated in this respect, but um, can the whole island be this way in the next 10 years? I'm not sure. I think the way Bermuda's set up, we don't like to be inconvenienced. Think about it. Look how many traffic lights were on the roads recently. The summer, it was bad, Sancha. It was
It's
bad.
still bad. It
Oh,
is still bad.
you'd know better than me. James Burgess and Karen Simmons for you.
I'm sorry. 2008. What a year! It will only keep poles and wires from falling on the ground.
Mhm. I don't know what that one means, James Burgess, but thank you.
It is time, and with the road works for years, why didn't the power lines go underground at that time? More hands make light works, as the saying goes.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. Bernadette Tucker says, morning, yes, put them underground for times like this. But what about the beauty of the island? Shouldn't we have them underground because of this also, in addition to the amount of work recently? Yeah, I see that point. Samcat Play says, I believe that the changes they're making now is to do with undergrounding of the cables to improve the infrastructure. Now it's much better than it was, though, work in progress. And I think that's what everybody want, work in progress. I just think for the entire island to be underground, we must understand that we're going to be inconvenienced, and it may reflect in those Belco bills that many of us think are already high. Yes, certain parts are underground now, but for the entire island, folks, I do believe there's a better way than the traditional way that we've been doing. Pulls, lines above us that are easily impacted. It is a better way, Sancho. We know there's a better way, right?
Mhm.
It's proven elsewhere. Um, but what does that look like for the Bermudian household? What does that look like when I say Bermudian household? Are we discussing higher cost? Are we discussing what kind of inconvenience takes place for that to happen? And are we willing to pay more? Are we willing to be inconvenienced? Because I tell you, the house, what they say when you go to a casino, the house always wins.
Yes.
Yeah. I guess. Let's go. Teresa and Marie says people have paid hefty sums out of pocket to have lines put underground. Otherwise, I'd say it could be a 20-year project. But that's what means to do the entire island. Yeah. You're talking
Easily.
you're talking decades. Decades. Um we'll bring Maya in because she has some audio what's going on the road, so we'll bring her in a bit for the news to discuss that. Sean DeShields says wind turbine and other hybrid and wind solar energy systems need to be alternative options. That would be my thought. Sean, what are they doing at National Stadium? Anyone remember what they're doing up National Sports Center regarding lights and energy? I thought it was something similar that does that. Michelle White says Bermuda pulls together in disasters, but not when it comes to cooperating with infrastructure changes. Well, that's a highlight. What a missed opportunity to put them underground. No, it's too late. Otherwise, they will defer cost to us. Solar is where it's at now. Make it affordable. So I guess my question, outside of cost, what is stopping individual households from doing solar? Again, folks, I'm ignorant to this, so forgive me if I just don't know. Like, what would be stopping individual households from going solo on their own? Would it
Probably just cost.
just cost?
Yeah.
Yeah, because again, this is not my specialty, and I know, like, I saw people writing it out on Facebook and Twitter the other day, saying, you know, they were using language that I can only use on Jamel Hart. But they were just a bit surprised and shocked that in 2022 the whole island isn't underground, and so I think the question is relevant. What are your thoughts on Belco putting power lines underground in Bermuda for the entire island, to help the island maintain electricity? Or do some of you care whether or not your electricity is on? This might be downtime for you. We're so spoiled. Like, some children will never know what it's like to go out without lights for weeks after a hurricane. Like, man.
Mind you, the last major hurricane, I was out for a week.
Yeah.
I was like,
how old was Maddox?
He was about, was it 3 years ago? 3, 2, 3, maybe about 3.
All right.
Yeah, but he's an outdoor kid anyway, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Manuela John says, I received some photos from damage caused by Hurricane Fiona in Atlantic Canada. They fared much worse than us. I see overhead wires. Interesting. Yes, I did. It went up to Nova Scotia, if I'm not mistaken, right, Manuela? Yeah. No, it's havoc along the way, and I am so happy for what Bermuda is, but sad to see, what they always say, Bermuda with its water system so much, how we can sell our brilliance onto others. Like, why are we not taking our intelligence and brilliance and offering to others in that respect? When we look at what happened in Puerto Rico and other islands and even countries and saying, look, this is our infrastructure, here's what we can help. Sell that brilliance, sell that intelligence. We have something so unique that works and makes how we live, where we live, a safe place. Someone said it last week. If ever you don't want to be in a hurricane, but if you're in a hurricane, Bermuda's the place you want to be when it comes to a hurricane because of the infrastructure. So
yeah, but you could tell. I don't know. Belco definitely had a plan this time. I know I said it a few minutes ago, but I've never seen lights come, so many people without lights, and it come back so quickly.
Yeah,
they definitely had a plan.
Okay, all right. So look, what I find interesting, I'm gonna do this because I've been, I'm drinking my water all morning, on calm, had to go work out, been up since 4 something. What I'm gonna say is, I think Bermudians as a whole, we are so short-sighted. We are so short-sighted. And this is why I say it. The end of the month is this week. Next week, when those Belco bills come, you're going to be right back to where you were before this weekend when you got your lights back. Moaning and complaining about your bill. Rightfully so. Rightfully so. But why I say what's short-sighted is, again, I started the show. We thanked the Bermuda Regiment, the Bermuda Police Service, all first responders, Belco, you name it. We're thanking them. But folks, we're thanking people for doing what they're paid to do. That's my point. For what we pay, yes, we pay to have lights. The least you can do is have my damn lights back on ASAP. I'm not saying, and hear me when I speak. We have got to stop being a people, because we do it with parenting, raising new generations of children, rewarding them for doing what they should be doing. Stop rewarding people. Like, okay, cool. You did your homework. That's fine. But did you do it right? That's what you're supposed to do. So I'm all good celebrating things and being happy, but let's not lose sight that there's nothing heroic about doing what you're supposed to do. That's my point. Sorry, just keeping it real with you for
No, I was just thinking, and I think as a people, it becomes that that balance of, we are that people that we are going to praise. It's management versus the actual, guys that are out there doing the work, right? So obviously management needs to work on doing better, but the workers that are actually executing it, I think that's where we put our praises.
and that's where it should go, to the actual workers, but
Yeah.
not the corporation. Is
Yes.
the corporation is rubbing you dry, if I mean,
Yeah.
but credit to the workers. And again, as I stated, these people leaving their families to go out there, even the government DCI workers, I saw they were out at work and doing stuff. So let's keep in mind them. But again, Dr. King said it's nothing heroic about doing the right thing. I see it's nothing heroic about doing what you're supposed to do, what you're paid to do. I think it's Maya time, because she's got some for us. Let's bring in Miss Palacio for the Daily Hour News Break, brought to you by Peoples. All right.
Good morning.
Happy Monday.
Happy Monday, everyone. This is the Daily Hour News Break, brought to you by People's Pharmacy.
All right. So Maya, we were talking about, lines going under, and you said that, people in the audience were saying that's what they thought Balco were doing already. So what you got for us? Anything on that?
Yes. Okay. So I went back on my interviews that I've done. I had an interview with the premier where he does actually explain what's going on. I think everyone pretty much kind of hit it on the nail, but this is just a little bit more information for those who want to know. Now, I will say, I hope it worked out fine. I'm going to try to play the audio by my mic and that it doesn't make too much static noise. So let's try that first.
All righty. Let's see what we got.
I'm pausing so I don't speak over. So this is an interesting one, and here's why I say this is an interesting one. It's an interesting one because we want to make sure we upgrade the infrastructure. It was a good time to upgrade the infrastructure when the economy, with the coronavirus, etc. So we made sure that, working with Belco and other things, to make sure that we could upgrade the infrastructure. We're replacing outdated and old underground pipes, making space for water, making space for sewage pipes, all those things to upgrade the infrastructure of the island, which is taking place throughout the country. But yes, there is a lot. When will it end? Probably another 2 years. We're trying to upgrade the infrastructure of this country. I mean, remember, there's certain things that, we're talking about how we treat our sewage in the country.
So, yeah. So basically it has to do with like the water route and fixing piping for sewage as well. But he did mention that they are also in works with Balco, and it will take roughly another 2 years. And that interview was in March of 2022.
So to Sancha's point, get it all done together. But I don't think, he has a tendency to repeat himself to make himself sound intelligent. But that's neither here nor there. I just felt like it was repetitive without being direct. I don't know, direct in saying exactly what's happening to me. Like, I heard sewage, I heard improving the island's infrastructure, but I didn't hear what's happening, how it's being done. And that's probably not what he was, asked to say, but we'll see. That was 2022. We did hear that a hotel was going to start being built in the summer of 2022. That hasn't happened yet. But like I said on Friday, if you missed it, don't be surprised, as this premier has opposition for his leadership if he mentions a deal for a hotel this coming month. But that's not what you got for us today. You have a top story, don't you?
I do have some stories coming in, but I do want to add about the Hurricane Fiona. I actually did contact some of my friends out there in Nova Scotia. Halifax didn't get too much of it. It was fairly okay. A lot of winds, some trees went down, but definitely Newfoundland got a huge chunk of it. Some houses actually went into the water because of Hurricane Fiona. So yeah, a couple of ones that are like on the edge actually did end up going into the water, which is quite sad. So Bermuda is actually very blessed in how the storm hit us versus them.
Building codes, folks. Building codes. Man.
Yeah.
All right. Sad to hear it. Hopefully, was there any lives lost? Like,
that I do not know. That I do not know. But I believe that some were actually told to evacuate days prior. So to get away from that, because they did expect it to be quite harsh.
Okay, cool. What else you got for us in the news?
In the news today, I'm actually going to talk about some lectures and some events that are coming up in Bermuda, especially one tonight at 6 p.m. at the Dr. E.F. Gordon Hall in the BIU building. There will be a presentation on taxation reform. And according to the flyer, there's going to be a special guest, MP Curtis Dickinson.
So hold on. So let me, I'm gonna do this because I wouldn't be me if I didn't, right? But first off, why is this flyer just coming out if Mr. Dickinson is, maybe we're not his target audience because it's at the BIU, it's by Move Bermuda. Maybe we're just not his audience. But I'm just not understanding, one, Mr. Dickinson, if you're vying for leadership, you got to do more than this. And you got to talk to whoever made this flyer. No disrespect. I don't care if it's my brother, my sister. I don't know who did it. But
I think the same.
Seriously, come on, man. Like, I'm going to tell you this. When you're going up against David Burt, David Burt's a lot of things, but one thing he is a worker. He's intelligent. He understands marketing. He understands promoting. He understands convincing people. This ain't going to do it, Mr. Dickinson. This ain't going to. We just heard about this yesterday via a WhatsApp. Some people are just finding out about this today. Mr. Dickinson, if you're serious about being leadership of Bermuda, you can't just show up on Twitter on Friday when David Burt is a master at Twitter. You got to do better. And you have 20-something days to show the people of Bermuda that you're serious and you are willing to meet them where they are. I'm done. Get me started on a Monday morning vying for leadership, and this is what you do.
I took it as if I felt like maybe he was just invited. And it wasn't really something that he was.
Guest speaker. Okay. The only thing I see here is Curtis Dickinson because of the funds.
And I felt like maybe it was this was planned already. And it was like, okay, being that he's come out and announced that he's going to go for leadership, let's invite him. Maybe he can speak on it. I'm here trying to clean it up. But the flyer, I almost. When I first looked at it, I was like, maybe this is a joke. That's how I felt. The money signs behind it, I felt like maybe it was a flyer for a party somewhere. And then I read it and I was like, this is like serious.
If Mr. Dickinson is attending this event, the people should know. Bottom line.
Yeah.
Bottom line.
And maybe if he was a guest that was at it, maybe they need to think of, what's good and what's bad. Like, not all publicity is good publicity. And maybe this is one that should have been skipped until we can get it together and do it right.
If he's attending this event, he should be out there letting people know he's going to be here. And I don't care who's behind the event. I don't care if you're mad about what I said just now. The flyers, I can't say the S word. It's crap.
Mattis would say trash.
It's trash. That's what I think.
I will actually be at the event now. I'm going to try to get there and try to get some video footage to give a mini recap. But I have to go on with the news, guy.
Oh, sorry.
So other than that happening tonight, there's going to be a pretty amazing thing going on outside. Jupiter will be the closest it's been to Earth in 59 years, and it will never be this close again for over 100 years. So if you're able, get outside, grab some binoculars. You should be able to see even the lines on Jupiter itself. So that's something that's pretty exciting. If you're able to get out there tonight, do yourself a favor and do it, because it won't happen again in your lifetime, most likely.
I guess I should have had a telescope.
You don't even need a telescope. You should be able to see it. It'll be the second brightest thing in the sky, beside the moon. So that's going to be pretty awesome to see.
I'll be looking. I'll be looking out. What time you said?
It's going to be late tonight. I would say as soon as it gets dark, you should be able to see it. They say it should be bright for the entire week, but it's going to be obviously the brightest tonight. So do yourself a favor and go check it out.
Well, I have a bedtime, so hopefully I could check it sometime. What else you got for us, Maya?
Another thing for us this coming Tuesday, tomorrow, there's going to be a lecture at the Bermuda College called Murder in Paradise. The lecture is made up of 4 panelists, like the Honorable Juan Wolf and also Cordell Hill, who has lost a brother to antisocial behavior. As Bermuda's only college institution, Sean DeShields, the chairperson of the lecture committee, says it's their duty to kind of divulge into these topics of conversation and try to find out the root causes and also solutions. And I'll be sharing a video on what to kind of expect later today. I did a story the other day on my social media page just about murders on the island and how our community feels and reacts to them. So look out for that later today. And I'll also do a recap on the event tomorrow, but everyone's encouraged to come out tomorrow at Bermuda College. Seriously,
if you can get to that event, I know when you saw that flyer sent you were like, yeah, I want in. That's how you do a flyer. That's how you do a flyer. Again, I'm look, we live in a Bermuda. I'm sorry. Getting back to it. We live in a Bermuda where we're so comfortable with mediocrity because somebody's our friend, we don't tell them the truth. You know how Simon Cowell was to people who couldn't sing on American Idol? Like, we're afraid to be that real with them. We're afraid to be honest. That flyer for tomorrow night's event, to the point. And if there were ever a flyer to teach you how to get people to an event, that's it. And so I hope that Bermudians attend. I hope that we have a conversation that leads to solutions, but I hope the right people attend these events. The right people, not the choir, but the people who, like, take your son, take your son's friend. And props to Bermuda College, Sean DeShields, Quentin Charlotte, Cordell Hill, the Honorable One, and it's someone else, sorry. Someone else.
Cordell Hill will be on it.
Yeah, Cordell Hill, I said him. Someone else, but I think it's a great conversation.
Quentin Charlotte.
Yeah, I definitely messaged you. I was like, thanks for posting this, right?
Yeah. Great one. Yeah. What else you got, man?
Last 2 things on the list. Just on Saturday night, if you saw that big bright in the sky, that was SpaceX launch in Florida. They are launching Starlink satellites to orbit. So that's what it was, if you're still curious what was going on in the sky with those bright lights. Lastly, coming up, according to an CNBC article, women account for 26.7% of tech in the workforce, and Black women specifically make up only 1.7%. And those stats reflect America, but it's not too far off when it comes to Bermuda as well. And in October, I'll be moderating a panel on NFTs. If you don't know what that is, they're basically a unique cryptographic tokens that exist on blockchains that cannot be replicated. And if that sounds confusing to you, then just stick tuned to understanding what actually it is, because I'll be divulging in that on the topic. And a Bermudian female who is well involved in tech, Curry Luna, would actually be creating this event and this panel discussion, trying to get people into understanding what NFTs are. And it's quite important to actually get on top of this conversation, because it will probably be in regular conversations coming forward in the new age and era of tech.
I don't understand.
So I reached out to Curry probably about a good 6 months ago now, because I have been researching NFTs, and I'm like, this is going so far over my head. I don't know if it's because it's just not my generation or I'm getting old, but so then I saw this come out and she was like, we're going to do an event. I am there because I need to understand this. Jamal, I feel like this is a movement that we have to we have to understand. Even the art, the NFT art and the digital, I'm like, okay, how does this work? So I'm there.
It's definitely going to be something that we really have to pay a focus to, because it was already used in New York Fashion Week. People had to have NFTs to be able to even go to some of the events. And I know it sounds like something that just over your head, because honestly, it was for me as well.
Something that we need to continue another time, because we got a guest coming up. But what you got in the weather for?
The weather today is actually going to be kind of sunny, kind of cloudy, a little bit of showers, and we're actually finally getting into the low 80s of the temperature now, everyone. So no longer in the high 80s. So it looks like summer's about to leave us. It's going to be a high of 81 degrees Fahrenheit today.
Oh, best season of the year. We've got days of the year, Sancha.
I do. Today is Human Resource Professional Day. Being in HR can be a difficult task to handle because all of the critical tasks that the HR department does helps keep the business running and successful. While there may be some that don't like that department, they're vital and essential, and sometimes they may not get enough credit for what they do. So today is Human Resource Professional Day.
I'm trusting.
I have been, as an entrepreneur, I've been HR for about the last week now, and I don't like it. I need an HR person.
there is positive HR. I mean, there was an HR lady at the Bermuda Tourism Authority who rose up the ranks, and now she's the interim CEO. So I think, there are some positive HR stories out there, folks, if you're very good at HR and, look out for the company and organization and people, I guess. So, hey, you never know. HR is a great path to go.
Yes.
Maya, thank you so much.
Have a great day, guys.
All right, later. All right, folks. Maya, before you go, actually, did get something. Caller John says there was a woman in Prince Edward Island who was swept away during the hurricane, but her body was found yesterday. So very sad news. I'm sorry, Newfoundland. Sorry. So very sad news. Thank you, Carla, for that. And I did see Carla John. You lost light, so I'm glad to know that you're safe, and hopefully you're back. Everything's fine with you and your family. So very sad news there, but Mother Nature.
Yeah.
Thanks so much. We'll see you tomorrow.
Bye.
Have a great day.
All righty. All right, folks. We've got a conversation. Mr. Cordell Riley. We're talking wage commission today. Minimum wage. A lot of you have opinions on minimum wage, right? I do. I do. I'll leave it at that. Dr. Thomas Sowell, I think is a Dr. Thomas Sowell said minimum wage. Well, we'll get to that later. Let's go to take a commercial break if I could find a commercial, Sanjay. I think I just gave away the Daily Play.
Let's face it, life can be a little wild, but shopping doesn't have to be. I choose People's, so that whether it's a prescription that needs to be filled, a toy for my little terror, or a gift for a new addition to the family, we'll see about that. Everything's available in one convenient location. Some call it People's. I call it my one-stop shop in the city. People's, we're here for you.
Welcome to the new bulk store, Lindo's Next Level. Wake up in the morning with enough coffee to keep you running throughout the entire day. Your pet at home deserves the best. Stock up on dog food to keep your puppy happy. Need a quick, tasty lunch at home? Your chicken nuggets will be jumping right out of the freezer. What's a movie night without popcorn? You can never have too much. Lindo's Next Level. Why go anyplace else?
Mom's celebrating her 70th birthday next month. Have you noticed her age is catching up with her?
Yeah. Plus, she's having a hard time getting up and around like she's used to. I would sure hate to see her fall.
At Medical House Limited, we can help make life situations easier. We have electric beds, motorized scooters, bath stools, walkers, you name it.
Mom's been real good to us. We'll get her birthday and Christmas gifts from Medical House.
Medical House has relocated next to the Dandy Town Field, number 6 Bakery Lane, Pembroke. Telephone 292-3622.
Hey TDH community, we're excited to announce our first private shopping experience just for you. There will be huge discounts, giveaways, specials, and more. Not a member? Register today at thedailyhour.com. All right, welcome back to the big show. Sancha Durham, I'm Jamal Hartman. It's the Daily Hour brought to you by Medical House, One Communications, Linda's, and People's Pharmacy. If you haven't already, make sure you're subscribed on our website, thedailyhour.com, so you don't miss a chance for updates, promotions, prizes, and more. Also, if you're on the go and you can't watch us, you can still listen. If you download the BCG radio app, you can listen to Sancha, saying what she says and getting in trouble with different organizations on the island. All righty. Got to put it on her, I'm trying to be like a politician. No accountability. Let's bring our guest today. What?
Never mind.
We've got Cordell Riley from the Wage Commission. Let's welcome Mr. Riley to the show. Good morning, sir. Welcome. Uh-oh. I don't see Mr. Riley. It's dark. Oh, now we see Mr. Riley. How are you, sir?
We may have just a slight loss of internet connection, but it's been stable ever since I started. Good morning.
Okay, no worries, no worries. Well, I know how it goes. Some people are losing electricity these days, others are losing internet. But thank you for joining us, Mr. Riley. Let's just say this is the third time a charm, right? Because you were supposed to come on last week, Friday, and then 2 weeks ago, was it, or 3 weeks ago, and it was supposed to be a storm as well. So I think Monday is the best bet for you.
Yeah. It looks that way. If it's going to be in September, yes.
All right. Well, first of all, thank you. I'm probably the most well-rounded person that's come on this show because you've been on to discuss many different topics with us. But today we want to focus on minimum wage, as the minister Jason Hayward announced recently that there, a minimum wage was recommended for the government. But before we get into minimum wage, I think the audience needs to understand in the most concise and layman way ever what the difference is between minimum and living wage.
Okay. Well, the minimum wage, and you can have different philosophies for even that, but we took the philosophy following the guidelines laid out by the ILO, that the minimum wage would be basically a wage floor. In other words, no employer can pay below that. And so everyone starts off at least at a certain level. And a minimum wage doesn't necessarily have to cover all of your expenses. So I think some of the comments I've seen, people are in fact confusing a livable wage with a minimum wage. The livable wage is what we're working on now, does take into consideration all of the expenses that you have, and so that you live at least a decent life, not a luxurious life, but a decent life. So that's fundamentally the difference between a minimum wage and a living wage.
Got it. And why is a minimum wage necessary for Bermuda?
Well, I think in our research, most countries, I should say, have a minimum wage. In our research, one of the primary focus is part of social justice. You would have instances where during a market economy that you will pay whatever the market bears. So there, with the high mobility of labor, even though people talk about immigration challenges, there's a high level of labor mobility, which means that you can hire people from countries who perhaps are earning $10 a day. They may earn $10 an hour in Bermuda, but what we found is that people were earning, in some cases, $5.50 an hour. Some people were earning $6 an hour. Some people were earning, in fact, I saw a post on Facebook this weekend about somebody in the restaurant industry earning $6 an hour. And they're saying that with gratuities added, that they earn more, which is true. But if your basic pay is $6 an hour, then you have to rely on gratuities. So for our philosophy was that there was a certain level below which an employer could not pay.
Audience, I want to know from the audience if you agree with minimum wage in Bermuda, yes or no, as we continue the conversation. Obviously, there were some recommendations made, but how did the commission come to the conclusion that these options made the most sense, minimum wage? And for those who may not know, it was $13.19, $15.71, and $17.28.
Okay, so the Department of Statistics had done a great deal of work already in this area, and then it was handed over to us. And so that first minimum wage level you mentioned, the $13.19, was based on actually what the Department of Statistics had recommended with the rate of inflation, adjusted with the rate of inflation. So that was how we arrived at the floor. The next one was 50% of the average wage, based on the information from the Department of Statistics. And so that was something that was not below the poverty line, so $15.50. And then the 1730 or whatever it was to sort of get us closer to a livable wage, because we know the livable wage is going to be higher. And by sitting on the Global Living Foundation, I understand from my colleagues that there is always a difficulty when you set the minimum wage too low. You're spending a lot of time trying to get the gap between the minimum wage and the livable wage closer. And so we gave the government that options based on their philosophy. So we say, well, here's what we've come up with. Now, in terms of the direction you wish to go, you then can set it within those parameters. And this is exactly what has happened.
Interesting. Thanks. Again, audience, yes or no? Do you agree with a minimum wage for Bermuda? This is what got me, and this I tweeted about this. This is what got me when I read the statement by the minister, because I think he mentioned it on Labor Day. That's when it first came out. Maybe this is my lack of education on it, because again, I don't know the ins and outs about this. I just know that I don't see how minimum wage works without price controls. But I mean, maybe how does it work without price controls?
Well, it's always been stated that minimum wage is only one of the tools in the arsenal in terms of lifting everybody. And I think there are other things, and I think the ministry have also mentioned that there are other things that the government will be doing. At the press release, when we gave them our report, the minister stated that there will be other things in terms of assisting employers, perhaps with things like tax breaks for employing new employees, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know what they are, but things like that. So you're right that this is not the end all be all, but this is certainly a first step. And considering that probably one of the last Western countries to implement this, we're sort of catching up. And so we have the benefit of the experience of all those countries before us. So that's where I think we are.
All right. And that brings me to, saying one of the last Western countries is, what are some examples with similar economies to Bermuda where minimum wage has worked? Like, I haven't tracked, does Cayman have it? Does Turks and Caicos have it? Like, who has it where it's worked that's similar to Bermuda?
I think Cayman Islands does have one. I think Turks and Caicos. I think in our report we had mentioned a number of similar islands. Of course, United States, Canada, the UK all have a minimum wage, and I think Barbados was talking about it, or have it, or was talking about increasing it. So there are islands who have a minimum wage as well.
Gotcha.
Okay, so for me, being a small business owner, I know that introducing minimum wages, especially when we work on commissions and stuff like that, it is going to stir up our business a bit. Like it's going to create challenges for me, which Jamal and I spoke to when this first came out. But one of my questions is, what are the challenges in implementing a minimum wage in Bermuda versus a larger jurisdiction, for example, Luxembourg or Australia, who have second and third highest minimum wage rates respectively? How does that, how does it compare?
Well, what we did in our report is we showed the purchasing power parity. So, for instance, what does a dollar buy in Bermuda versus another country? And something that we already know, that is very expensive living in Bermuda. One of the things that if you look at the minimum wage in the UK, which I think is about $7.75, they have different rates depending on which part of the country you're in. You'll find that the minimum wage in the UK actually goes a lot farther because the purchasing power of the pound. We're having some challenges with the pound right now, but for instance, you can get a loaf of bread in the UK for less than a pound. And so the equivalent of Bermuda, even now with the rate of inflation, with the reduced value of the pound, that's about $1.20. And you can't buy a loaf of bread in Bermuda for $1.20. So you're better off poor in other countries than you are in Bermuda. And so some would say, well, that's why some people are leaving Bermuda, because even at the lower minimum wage, in the United Kingdom, that money goes a lot farther. So Bermuda's minimum wage is going to have to be on the higher side because of the purchasing power of the dollar in Bermuda.
Okay, but so what do you say to those that say that, if we establish a minimum wage, it'll only result in the business passing the cost over to the consumer?
Well, I mean, that's an argument that comes out. And in fact, we're advised by the expert that this is from a business perspective, you're going to get that. But the businesses have always passed the cost on to the consumer. For instance, there's an Italian branded bottle of water I buy. Prior to the pandemic, it was $2.09. During the pandemic, it went up to $2.99. And then with the war and supply chains difficulties, that same bottle of water is now $4.09. Folk do not ask the grocery store, for instance, where did they get the extra money to pay for that? The grocery store still brings that product in, and they simply pass the cost on. So that's what businesses do. They pass the cost on. But let me put this in a different perspective. So for instance, if you're running a restaurant and the meal costs, let's say for sake of argument, $10. And if your wage cost was $3 and your wage cost, say, goes up by 20%, so you're paying your employer $10 an hour, now you have to pay them $12 an hour. So your wage cost is going up 20%. So in using the restaurant scenario, if your labor cost of that $10 is $3, then your cost is going to go up to $3.60, your labor cost. So the overall cost of that meal should go up to $10.60. Now, if the restaurant tells you that because my labor costs have gone up by 20%, then your meal has gone up by 20%, and so they're charging you $12, that is not correct. And that's what happens. So, and that sounds logical to people that, the labor cost has gone up by 20%, so therefore my other costs have gone up by 20%. That's not the case. So the impact of a minimum wage overall is not going to put things, certainly inflation rate is not going to impact that so much. And in terms of cost, yes, it's going to increase costs, but by not as much as people think. And in some jurisdictions, some studies that we have seen is that people are, when the consumers are willing to pay more, knowing that this person that's serving them is actually getting a decent wage, or at least a minimum wage compared to what they were getting before. So the overwhelming body of knowledge in this field, and I'm told that in terms of economics, the wage rates is probably the most research area. The body of knowledge kind of tilts in favor of having a minimum wage.
That almost feels like a cat and mouse game. Like we're increasing minimum wage, but then we know that it's going to increase, the cost is going to go into the consumer. So then how it's like a cat. I don't see how it, but okay. The Bermuda government's position on paper on minimum wage lists that the lowest paid occupations in Bermuda, which have been highlighted, that there's a serious immigration problem. And what are the chances that increasing the minimum wage will attract workers to Bermuda to fulfill those jobs and increase our numbers? Like, so for instance, in I have the nail bar, and we have lots of for people that have come in from the Philippines because I can't find Bermudians. This minimum wage, so I have minimum wage, and we have they are paid on commission. How is that going to change? How is that going to get me a Bermudian worker into my door and to avoid? Because at this point, I only see it benefiting people that we have coming in on work permits.
Mm.
Well, I think from a Bermudian perspective, many Bermudians wouldn't work, say, for instance, the wages that I've mentioned before. So you're paying $6, $7, $8 an hour. And particularly in the construction industry, you've seen wages spike downwards. They don't get Bermudians. And so when they apply for work permits and they say we don't have Bermudians working, or they don't apply, well, that's true, because some construction workers say, I was earning a lot more than that 20 years ago. And so I think a movement to upwards would in fact attract some more Bermudians. But again, this is just a wage floor. So it's not intended to cover all of one's expenses. It's as a rate so that employers do not pay beneath it. And so it will likely have more, attract some more Bermudians in the field. But those individuals coming overseas, obviously there's no discrimination there, so they'll get the same rate. Maybe it might cause employers to have another look at the Bermudian workforce.
So you use the point of construction, but them being paid lower, but we understand that the cost of building in Bermuda, especially since the war, importation, the cost of building in Bermuda is so expensive at the moment. I mean, when you go to get a mortgage, that's the first thing the bank tells you. To build in Bermuda right now is outrageous. So that cost has to go somewhere. And if we compare it to 20 years ago, where there's a construction boom, where there was a lot of money coming into our economy just based on, construction, I think those things have to be considered. But how do we ensure as a business already paying above the established minimum wage? So if I'm paying my employees above what you're suggesting, that they're not going to revert down to the minimum wage for new employees?
Well, that's an ethical problem. And we will certainly be, in terms of a monitoring phase, looking at that. Unions will be looking at that as well. If you feel that, okay, I'm paying my employees $20 an hour, but now I can pay them $16 an hour, that's really an ethical thing. And if employers want to do that, then they will do it, and they'll have to suffer whatever consequences come with that.
I'm personally, and I appreciate this because I've actually learned a lot. I think what you're doing, Mr. Riley, is operating with a conscience. I think you have and let's be honest, a conscience is what's needed. Integrity is what's needed. That's the least that people want. The challenge with having a conscience, though, as I can tell you, is sometimes our conscience is not always doesn't always lead to the right solution, I guess. And what I mean by that is, going back to my question about without price controls, and people were eating me up on Twitter as if I was calling for price controls. And absolutely no way am I calling for price controls. I use the United States. I don't think minimum wage works in the United States. And I'll tell you an example. I was at a tourism committee meeting in a city in South Florida last week. And it was a professor from a local college here who went global because, not sure, but many Bermudians took his course during the pandemic, at the height of the pandemic. There was a university in Florida that was offering a hospitality and tourism course. Not sure if you remember that, Mr. Riley. But many people took it. And in this meeting, the biggest issue that they're having, not just in South Florida or Florida, but the U.S., is finding employees in the hospitality and restaurant sector, right? So they spoke about how they've increased wages, $14 an hour, $17 an hour, and they just can't find people. And so they went on this rant. And folks, if you saw my LinkedIn, there's a lot of reasons why I praised Maya Palacio last week. But this is another reason why, because they started going on about how young people just don't want to work anymore. And no, there's a difference. And this professor said it. He said, no. These young people have seen their parents and their ancestors and their friends and family work hard their entire lives and still struggling to make it. These people have worked minimum wage, right? Some people started minimum wage and moved up. When I see these stories, I don't see how minimum wage honestly works for the betterment of the people. That's what I see. So when I see saying that, well, the US has it, Canada has it, and Bermuda's behind, I actually feel like the comment you made just now, the word you use, if we create an ethical community and society, then we wouldn't have to worry about implementing the minimum wage. I think that when I look at, a certain government civil servant, high-level civil servant, saying years ago when I was on a different talk show, well, we got 2 weeks vacation to start by law, or 10 days, whatever it was. And I said, and you're okay with that? Just because the law says it? So go into Stancha's comment about, employees saying, okay, well, I was paying 25. You're telling me I only have to pay 17 now? Whoop, there we go, right? And yes, it's ethical, but if anything, I think that we need to create, and I'm not sure how we do this, it's just a suggestion. I think we will actually be a more successful jurisdiction if we focus on creating ethical business community over pushing what I believe in a jurisdiction like the US has honestly not helped the people it's supposed to. I have not seen it. That's why, and there's many more factors, as you said, Mr. Riley. There's more factors to it. This is just one step. But my question is how do we get to those steps to ensure that this minimum wage is not here and then now we've got to wait 10 years until that next step? I'm just confused as to how it's going to benefit the people on the lowest end. And I'm not just talking about Bermudians, because Sancha mentioned people coming from other places. But I just want to know, how are we going to solve that problem?
Well, I think if you look at it in the reverse, if you don't have a minimum wage, you're going to get what you've always got, and that's a race to the bottom. And so you still have those challenges of if using the example of attracting Bermudians, if you can get away with paying $7 an hour and say, well, they get the rest for grats or whatever, or you can bring in somebody from another country who's used to earning $10 a day, who would work for whatever you want to pay them, you will still get that. This changes the paradigm somewhat in terms of there is a minimum that you do have to pay. And at the very least, you're going to have to think about whether or not it's worth to bring somebody in, because I could do it before at a very low wage. Now, at least I have to pay a minimum wage. Maybe I should try to focus on Bermudians. And so, again, the philosophy, it was not, it's a wage floor. I think the real work comes in terms of establishing a living wage. And in most countries, that is not statutory. It is aspirational. In other words, we've done all the work to see what it costs to live in Bermuda, and now we want to work towards that. And so individuals, whether that means upgrading their skills, et cetera, we know what it costs to live in Bermuda. We don't know now, we just simply know that it's expensive. So even the work itself to find out all of these things, I think is beneficial to the country.
All right, we've got a restaurant entering the conversation. Bermuda Bistro at the beach saying, don't agree to high minimum wage for restaurant service and willing to open my books to someone like Mr. Riley, which I think that shows service taking home over 30 an hour, not including extra tips, which is substantial. Any response to that?
Well, then you see, for instance, at the bistro, they wouldn't be affected by this minimum wage because their staff are already earning more than the minimum wage. So, and I think most of the restaurants have indicated the same. I mean, we have a restaurateur on our commission who has indicated that most of the restaurants are already above this. So the impact overall, certainly for the hospitality industry, for most part of it, there are some that won't be in compliance, but for the most part, they're not going to be impacted. So I don't know if he's considering that $16 is high minimum wage, but I think the minister indicated that for restaurants, it would be 75%. So they would be well within there. So for the bistro, there actually would be no change in operations.
All right. Tamara Richardson, another business owner, says labor costs are not only wages, they include taxes and benefits. And above a certain payroll level, the business and employee tax bracket will become significantly greater. But it definitely sounds good on paper. Any response to that?
Well, if I go back to the cost of the bottled water, the grocery store thought sufficiently that water was worth bringing in and brought it in even at the higher price. When it comes to human beings, if somebody has been earning a very low wage and at least gets a floor, we're talking about really the improvement in an individual's life and all the things that you have to pay, insurance, pension, all that, you have to pay those anyway. But for the person who is at the bottom level, that means that their life has a little bit more meaning than what it did before.
I honestly, and you know me, I think you're operating with a good conscience, and I think it's going to take a good conscience from business owners, but also I think business owners are always going to have to, sacrifice in this, right? Like, and not all businesses feel they're in a position to sacrifice, and that I think is the part where I kind of see where small businesses, and I'm speaking small businesses in particular.
Well, Jamal, I think that you say that they're operating with a good conscience, but from where I stand, I don't think that the business, as a business owner, I don't think that our point of view has really been sat down and looked at. As the beach said, I'm willing to open my books as well. I don't think our side of it is being looked at. It's only about the employee. But what about, so I personally feel that there are going to be a lot of small businesses that have to close down when we do, other than restructuring the pay and how we pay. But I don't think the other side of the coin is being looked at. And I think that happens a lot. And now we're saying, okay, so minimum wage, when we talk about people that are working on commission, you don't have to work. It's another way of, I feel things are being handed to us again. Because if you're working for a certain commission, you're going to upsell, you're going to push, now you don't have to do that because the minimum is set at this rate. So it's on the business once again to take a loss because you're not upselling because you're going to get this anyway.
It changes the dynamic. I get it. But no, I don't think, I mean, when I say good I think you're operating in good conscience in what he believes is necessary for the worker. But at the same time, I think the business, just from a business perspective, like you, Sancha, realizing that, at the end of the day, it's tough when we're not in the conversation, because I want to say this, and I've said it on the show before. The idea that everyone in business is rubbing Peter to pay Paul, or like just rich and taking advantage of workers, isn't necessarily, well, it's not true. It's not. So I think that that's one of the conceptions people develop when they think minimum wage is the solution to that and taking advantage or exploiting people. I think that's one of the things. But Mr. Riley, based on what Sancha said, how many private small businesses in particular have been invited into the process? Because I know you did say I know there were people from different areas, people like restaurateurs involved. I did see the names of the list on the commission, but how valid was their say?
Well, I mean, they're quite valid. And I also had people call me directly. I also have businessmen tell me that, the minimum wage should be at least $20 an hour. And they import staff as well. And they felt that, there are some businesses out there who are not being real. So we've had both sides of the story. So when we listen to all of these, it is impactful. For instance, the UK, their minimum wage is set. There's no carve out for the hospitality industry. If it's £8 an hour, it's £8 an hour. Everybody has to pay it. But because of the input from those who work in the sector, we didn't go that route. We went for a hybrid method. In fact, we, because at the end of the day, one of the questions that we critically asked ourselves was, if a person is earning the minimum wage, does it really matter how it is arrived at? And if the answer to that question is no, then you will allow, say, for instance, service charge. And I've learned that the difference between service charge and gratuities, you would allow the service charge, meaning which is added to the bill, to be form part of the wage, not the actual cash tips. So therefore, the restaurant has, or the hospitality industry has the opportunity to determine. Now, the minister has actually recommended that there a different way and this is one of the methods recommended by, or at least included in part of the ILO. They have a huge document on this particular topic that you could go for a carve out in terms of a percentage of the minimum wage, and that's the way the minister has gone. Now, for instance, we heard that there was a chain of restaurants in Bermuda that were paying their staff $12 an hour. With the carve out now for the hospitality industry, which the wage likely to be at $12 an hour, they will not be affected by this. So I think in terms of a large portion of the industry, they're going to be okay. There's not going to be a major shift at all with this minimum wage.
All right, one last question before I get to a statement. Michelle White says, it just occurred to me, what type of businesses will be forced to increase to meet this minimum wage? By this conversation, it appears that most pay at least the minimum.
Yes, with the wage now at $12 for the hospitality industry. We were told a few years ago that most of them will be able to be compliant with that. So there's going to be a minor amount that even at the minimum wage, they'll have to find a way to pay their employees to get to that gap. But then one would ask, if you've been operating all this time at a wage that's substantially low, a $12 wage, then this whole question that you raised about whether there is a level of exploitation does come into play.
All right. One last comment before we let you head out. Tamara Richardson says businesses have already responded. Look at how many jobs have been lost due to rising costs in the last decade. Wages are already the most significant cost. Not sure if the consequences have been debated, but they could be significant for entry level and youth employment. And one thing we haven't mentioned today on the back of that, Mr. Riley, is one thing companies have learned, and as I stated last week, technology has replaced a lot of lower end jobs. It can't replace all, but was this considered during the conversation? If so, on what level?
Well, we see that all the time, the technology, and I've certainly read enough about the technology replacing human beings, and we see that happening. It's not been on the scale as predicted, but I think it's slowly happening that way. The thing that we did consider, because you mentioned, or at least somebody mentioned, youth employment, etc. We considered about the young folk, and business say, well, I'm not taking them on because I have to pay that. We did have a carve out, at least in our recommendations, for apprenticeships to be not subject to the minimum wage, so long as it doesn't go beyond a year. So you can take on somebody, you can pay them what you want, as long as it is not for longer than a year, because you don't want people taking on somebody and saying, oh, they're an apprentice, and they're still there for 5 years as an apprentice. So we did look at youth employment. But I think the public has to understand that the time frame in which we had to work, we started our job, we announced in February, we had our first meeting, we announced in January, first meeting in February, and then the second meeting was scheduled for March of 2020, which was postponed to the pandemic. And so we had some real challenges in terms of getting our work done within the year. And we had to get a report done by March 31st. So we had to do a lot of work in a short period of time. And so that is what's one of the challenges that we had. We're spending a little bit more time now focusing on the living wage.
Mr. Riley, we can go on and on. This is a good conversation. I'm enjoying it. And it's helpful. As some people have said in the audience, they're really learning a lot. We definitely would, I feel like these conversations bring us closer to resolution. So at least I hope they do. But I definitely want to continue this conversation sometime, but we are out of time. We've got to pay some bills. Thank you, honestly. Thank you for, finally coming actually after all these storms, right? But thank you for coming, and we'll definitely have Sean to reach out to reconnect and continue this conversation so that people have more information on both sides. And appreciate you.
Thank you. Appreciate being here and being able to assist the public.
All right. Talk soon, Mr. Riley.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Cordell Riley from the Wage Commission. If you appreciated that conversation, give us a thumbs up, a love, a like. We have to take a quick break. We're going to come back, wrap it up, and get some final thoughts from Sencha and myself. Do not go anywhere. Oh, and the Daily Play.
A lot happens around your home. That is why at One Communications, we have introduced affordable security and video monitoring, because everyone should be able to afford to protect their family. Anytime, from anywhere, One Home Security keeps you connected and puts security in your hands with an easy-to-use smartphone app to control everything. Home security is important to keep you and your family safe. Motion-activated cameras around your home and security monitoring within create a complete security system providing protection both inside and outside your home. Professional monitoring means that there's someone on call with 24/7 protection to notify the authorities and help keep you and your loved ones safe. We are dedicated to whole home protection with indoor and outdoor cameras, smart door locks, motion sensors, and more, so you'll always be connected to what matters most. With professional installation, no upfront hardware fees, and low monthly rates, because keeping your family safe should be affordable for everyone. Total home video monitoring and security, there's no better way to protect your home than with One Home Security.
Alrighty, thanks again to Cordell Riley from the Wage Commission for that conversation. Again, if you appreciated the conversation, give us a thumbs up, a love, a like. Make sure you share this conversation, not just to your employee friends, but your employer friends. This conversation needs to be bigger than what it is, and we need people on both sides to be involved. So let's continue these conversations. This can change the very outlook of Bermuda, and I want people to understand it. I'll give my final thoughts later, but it's time for the Daily Play, brought to you by Heineken 0.0. Great taste, no alcohol, and Bermuda Trivia at stores throughout Bermuda. Follow them on social media. Sancha, are you ready?
Yeah.
All right. It's a who said it. Kind of told you the answer earlier. Quote, the problem isn't that Johnny can't read. The problem isn't even that Johnny can't think. The problem is that Johnny doesn't know what thinking is. He confuses it with feeling.
I heard you want to start the music.
Oh.
I heard you say Dr. Jones. Is that what you said? No. I don't know, Jamal.
All right, let me just hear that song. Let me hear that song, that sweet, sweet song. Let's hear it. Thomas Sowell.
Okay.
Yeah, Thomas Sowell. So yes, that is a very interesting quote. If you know him, he has some very interesting takes about economics, very more on the conservative side. He was probably one of the most brilliant minds in terms of money and entrepreneurship, depending on which way you swing. But let's wrap up today's show. First, obviously talking about Balco and Underground, and then the living wage. What are your final thoughts, Sancha?
I mean, as I said, I just feel with the Balco situation, there should have been a meeting of the minds a while ago, so that everyone can come together and we can, just do this one time instead of inconveniencing the public. And you need to start something in order to get to the end of it, right? Mm-hmm. Start somewhere, but it should have been done a while ago. And for them to just say it's not in the budget, we keep having these price hikes, and I understand things are more expensive, mm-hmm. But I also think the corporation is taking some of those price hikes. So mm-hmm. We need to start somewhere. Mm-hmm. With the conversation on minimum wage, I'm sure you already can tell how I feel. It's no secret. A lot of the times in those rooms, I wonder, are the people making decision paying wages? Mm. It's a concern for me. And
Phil Barnett, I could be wrong, but I think Phil Barnett, who owns those restaurants, Island Restaurant Group, Pickled Onion, and them, I think he was on the commission.
That's good to know. But it's just one more thing to, and like you say, it does come down to having a conscience, and I'm only speaking for myself. I will not be in business if I didn't feel like I was paying. I would go without before, I'm paying people bottom of the barrel sort of wages, or I would shut down. But what they're going to pass the buck to us to try to figure out, and I'm just like, I'm not for it. And as you said before, should government be making those decisions? And the comment that it passes on to the consumer, and that's just the way things work, then why are we doing it?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
I just think people need to be patient. I do think Underground is happening, will be completed in Bermuda. It will take years and years and years. But like I said, those things come with a cost, and may it be inconveniencing your time or more costs on your bill. But if you want to have those kind of things, that luxury of having electricity when you want it despite the weather, that's what you got to deal with. As far as today's show about living wage, I'm conflicted because I've never been a fan of minimum wage. I've never been a fan of it. I don't see how it's helped the people at the bottom. I don't think it's been what people think it is, right? People are still exploited on minimum wage. I know Mr. Riley said that it's about being ethical, and I'm not sure it's just about ethics, right? I think us already suffering restaurant industry and hospitality industry I'm not quite sure how it benefits them. So I get what consciously, I get why they want to do it. I get that. I'm just not quite sure how it will work. That's my only concern. How does it work? Because you can't tell me it works in the United States. I just don't see it working in the US. I'm not quite sure. I mean, I don't get it. Like, again, people cannot think about it like this. Again, I use this example, the late Walton Brown, where he shared in the House of Assembly how his parents worked in hospitality, or his father, and they were able to raise their children, build their homes by working seasonal back then, right? Money doesn't go as far today. And I don't know, maybe I'm a bit on the conservative side on this, but I just think that government needs to create ways for businesses to operate, because at the end of the day, we didn't get into technology much, but I've told you all, the Target near me in South Florida, there's 22 registers. And everybody's at the checkouts, the 4 checkouts, long line. You know why? Because they don't have to pay those wages on those cashiers. Sign of the times.
You know what? I just have a thought. Maybe we should focus more on having Bermudian, because we keep saying getting Bermudians employed. Maybe we should focus on programs to have Bermudians be more employable. Because even if we raise this minimum wage, the skill sets haven't changed.
Well, if we're not focusing on that,
right? So if we're not focusing on that, what will make me hire person A? But the skill set didn't change. I don't know. I'm having to pay them more, and they're still not able to do the job that I'm asking them to do.
this is Sir John Swan level conversation. We're almost at that time. Sanj, what you got for daily inspiration?
So very, very easy. It always seems impossible until it's done.
Nelson
And
Mandela.
this is from Nelson Mandela.
All righty. Folks, we've got to do this. I know we've been going long. But thanks again to our partners, Medical Oils, One Communications, Linda's, and People's Pharmacy, for ensuring that we're able to do this with you on a daily basis. As always, we appreciate you, we love you, and we thank you for making us part of your daily routine. If all goes well, we'll be back to do this again with you tomorrow. She's Sandra Durham. I'm Jamel Hartman. We're out.